Love's inception.
Yep.
I was really about outreach and helping the community. As I'm still a lot about that. I think it's changed a little bit in the capacity of, I would like to be more general in helping, I think, more people than not need help. Though, there are the groups, homeless, especially in this area. It's crazy. I find myself now that I run a music school that I'm around a lot more youth, so that's kind of the lane I was trying to go in originally. Originally I was looking at like a pediatrician and pediatric psychiatry and all that good stuff. Now, I talk to kids every day, parents bring them in, they come in, they might not talk to their parents about the stuff that they come in to talk to me about, but it's a safe space, and I'm finding that that's very fulfilling, and I think that's what your outreach has done for you over the past few years. It's been, I think you've evolved in what you were doing. And now we have Bri Phillips with the Collective Process here to chat for Love Discussions. Thank you very much for coming on.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
No problem. Honestly, this is the reason we're back here is because of this fine young woman who, reached out to me saying great things, and honestly, I was in a place where mentally maybe this type of thing wasn't in the forefront of my mind. There's so much other things going on in life, and post-COVID life starts getting back into normalcy, and so I found myself just honestly too busy and taking on other responsibilities and things like that. But with you honestly reaching out, it kind of sparked something within me to just even try to get this thing going again with you and what you're doing. We were just talking about how you're involved in youth. What is your exact title actually?
Yeah. So professionally or personally?
Let's do both.
Okay. So professionally, I would say that I work as a continuum of care systems coordinator.
Ooh,
so I kind of get in the meat and potatoes of what's going on in a community and try to help people work together to bridge the systems.
Awesome.
To bring them together. And then personally, I'll share with you that I just really have taken on this role of a community artist, community advocate, I would say, and someone that really does love to be around youth.
That's awesome.
Like you said, I think for me at first that working with youth was professional. It was, let me get this job so I'm with this group of youth because I want to work with them. And then what I realized was, like, I always had this thought of, like, stay in my lane. Let me do this thing and not the art thing. And so I did. I owned my nonprofit work, and I just kind of did art for fun. Then all of a sudden I realized, oh my gosh, while I'm doing my nonprofit work, art is coming up. Because things that were happening for me was, when a youth or an adult were accepting moving into a home or moving, out of a shelter into a home, there was like this drastic change that would happen where all of us thought this was supposed to be it. This was the home. This was the moment that makes everything better. And there was like this overwhelming depression that would come in for individuals, or just like sense of unknown.
I see.
And what I started to realize was that when I would go visit with them, we would do this. And what I would realize is that there was literally just silence if I wasn't there.
Because what do you do? What do you do in something so new?
What do you do? I just picked you up off the street and said that I have a brand new apartment for you, and this is supposed to be the end of your homelessness journey. And then you put them there. And the things I was realizing was, like, for me, day to day, I knew where to go because I knew at a certain time the train was coming.
I see.
And so I just started to realize artistically these individuals that were moving into homes didn't have sound that they were used to. So I'd picture like, oh, I would know to get up if I heard the train going. I would know that it's time to go get meals because I would see everyone going to the soup kitchen. And that to me was an artistic process. And I wondered, what's the next? Because someone taught me now, next, and later. And I realized in my roles with youth, right now I was the professional. But how was I going to show up for them next? And that was where the collective process came.
Ooh, look at that. Okay. I love origin stories. Okay. Yeah. That's actually beautiful because, I mean, at the end of the day, we need to figure out how we can evolve with the communities that we're trying to advocate for, because everything is not stagnant. Things change, move, adapt. And, I love to hear that, because we come from a society where I think work looks a certain way and has looked a certain way for a long time. Professionalism looks a certain way, and then freedom and creativity looks a certain way. And I think what we've done in our own society is separate all of those things to where you can't necessarily bridge those gaps and bring them all together. And hearing you say, I did the professional thing, I tried, I found that I couldn't necessarily ignore the artistic aspects of my life because they came in hand. And I think that leads us into saying, like, there's a lot more to art than meets the eye, and people don't accept that. I think, with this discussion, I think it is a form of art because it's allowing people to see something and interpret it how they must. I think that's art in its most pure form, and taking that a step further, I kind of lost my train of thought, to be honest with you. But taking that a step further, it's like, I think, with youth homeless, whomever, there are a lot of groups in our society specifically, because that's all I can speak on, that are not advocated for. And we as human beings who have taken the time to step outside of the rush, I guess, for lack of a better term, people are going in one direction. I think if we had to compare it to, I think of the scene in like Finding Nemo, when everyone's, in the current, going in the current, but you had to find your way to kind of jump in. You know what I mean? I like being outside of the current while watching, knowing that it's there to join if I need to for whatever reason. But speaking on my life personally, I think the unconventional is the way that I can leave an impact on this world, and I think you're finding the same thing. And I love to hear that you're, still doing it. You weren't discouraged by the fact that, I have to shift a little bit, but you've shifted in a way that it works for you and it works for the people around you. I think, when you're talking about people coming into this new chapter of their lives, trying to find something new, people don't really hear that part. We live on a very social media based, I guess, we live in a social media based world where you can always hear about the false altruism, where it's, you go out in the street, take your phone out, put your phone on the people and say, here's $5 to go to McDonald's or whatever, but it seems ingenuine. And I think a lot of people are trying to do something to be like that. Whereas I'm not saying you are more or less genuine than those people, but what you're doing is coming from a place where it's not about you, it's not about what comes of you as a person. It's more or less, what can you do as a vessel to provide something for people? And I think that's like really not a maturity, but I think as we go through this journey of life, there's just certain milestones and checkpoints that you reach, and it doesn't matter what age you are to reach those. But I think we all come to a point where I am a vessel to do something. I think a lot of people in our, parents' generation and things like that find themselves being the vessel to provide. So the vessel to provide, just go to work, do the same thing every day, find something secure, whatever. Doing the unconventional thing may not be as secure day by day, I think, but with the people that you're advocating for, the people that I would like to advocate for eventually in just the world, I feel like when you're finding those groups who need, day to day doesn't look the same. So you have to be adaptable. You have to be able to, flex with changing times and images and things like that. So it's great to hear a different perspective because, I talk to a lot of people, and not as many people dealing directly with the homeless community, but you always have your connotation where homeless, it looks either you want to help or you don't really care for those people. They got themselves in that position for whatever reason, and you know, that's that.
Yeah.
They're just there. And I don't know if we're in a place right now with everything that's going on where we can really say that there's a medium or a happy medium to say, okay, you can be that person to say, well, you know, they might have put themselves in that position, but you also have to be a human and understand that people make mistakes, or people just really have life hit them harder than most.
Yeah.
And you can't really account for those things. And I think, you know, without being immersed in it, people don't see it. And you know, that's the reason for these discussions, because having someone like you come on, talk about what you do, you know, I love to hear what you're doing, because I think that'll inspire more people who may not see a future for them to help, because they might feel, oh, well, you know, I want to do something more artistic to help them, but I don't see that being as beneficial as maybe this. Yes. You know what I'm saying? But, you know, it goes along with I guess the beauty is in the eye of the beholder, but I guess you could say art is in the eye of the beholder, or help is in the eye of the beholder. You don't know necessarily what help looks like to different people. Yeah. And you know, over the course of the years, just talking with people, I've learned that help could just be sitting there and just sitting there and being a presence for somebody, not talking, not offering your advice or your opinions, because sometimes people don't need that. Yep. You know, and I'm 29 years old. I find myself talking to people who are, you know, upwards 50, 60, you know what I mean? And it's like, I find myself with a dilemma of, oh, you've lived so much more life. Why is it that you're coming to me for like advice or some kind of guidance? But it's not about the age at which you've been here or the length at which you've lived and experienced. It's more or less, I'm just asking for something different. You know what I mean? A different outlook or perspective. And that's what we're here for. You know what I mean? I think that's what humanity really is. We're here to help and, you know, not necessarily hold the hand of the next person, but to be there for whatever the capacity is. If it's just me, you know, saying, you know, I feel you, dog, then that's it. And I can do that for you, because that doesn't take that much. You know what I mean? You came in with gifts today, and that was awesome, and I really appreciate that. But that little thing, it's just like that warms the heart, and you don't know what that could have done for somebody. Exactly. You know what I mean? So thank you for being you, because that's very awesome.
Well, I think the collective process I'll share with you is exactly that, because I'm an individual that, depending on the spaces or the places I've showed up, people may not have known my whole story. Sure. And I've, again, gone from that lane of like, stay in your lane. So here I don't talk about this. Here I don't talk about that. And I would start to section myself off in certain spaces. Yeah. And what I realized was it collectively took people from every single different one of those spaces to help me get to where I am today. And for me, process. I needed those individuals that I was meeting on the street. I needed the executives in my life. I needed all the situations I had in my life. I needed hearing you. I needed seeing Mike get on this show. To know that collectively we are all processing something, which is life. And getting outside of that norm, like you said, one of the things I would say to people is think about, you know, what I would say to people when I would meet them for the first time is, why me? Because I do have a service that I'm supposed to offer you. But what does make me different today than every other person in that rush? Because I do have a lot I want to offer to people. Doesn't mean it's what you need. And so when I would sit down to meet with someone, what I would call it was a living narrative. I would just ask them to start talking. We would start talking over coffee. We would start talking over, what did you have for dinner yesterday? Just getting a conversation going helps someone be able to create a narrative for their life. Absolutely. And if you walk by that person every single day, you don't know how many words they may even say in a day. It might be none. Yeah, that's true. And so can we just start talking? Because it was so fascinating to me. How did I make a career out of being the person that was the stranger that went up to someone and just said hi? Wow. And I had to sit with that, because why me? You could do the same thing I could do, and why was it me? And it was that vessel. It was because I'm sitting here knowing that you know more about your life than I do. And if I can sit with you, if I can show you grace and space and trust and all of that, then I call it the dance of trust. You might try something new and step one step out of your lane, and I'll dare do it with you. Wow. And so that's why it became the collective process, because you know what you need to do next, but maybe you just needed someone to go there with you. Maybe you just needed my phone.
Yeah, it's sometimes very simple.
And so with you, that's why I call it a lob. I throw it out there and I just see if someone catches it. Sure. And so that's why I messaged you to say, hey, you did something that changed my life. You gave a space and created a platform for people who maybe didn't know that they wanted to talk. To talk.
Yeah.
And I would have never have met those people if you didn't put them on a platform. And that's what was so powerful to me, was like, wait a minute, where'd that living narrative go? And so I was looking for it, and I found you again, and I said, like, wait a minute, where's his narrative?
That's absolutely amazing, because like that's just a perspective, and I'm talking all about perspectives here, and you know, trying to provide a perspective, but I guess maybe ignored certain perspectives in that, you know, there is that living narrative where it's like, you don't, I talked to you about this early. It's, you know, I was fearful of maybe putting myself back out there because there was XYZ that was, you know, taking up space. Yeah. But at the end of the day, and it's not necessarily like stretching myself thin, I was capable of making this happen, but it's more or less that fear of doing, or, you know, just having that one person say, hey, yo, it was actually a little more than what you thought, because I'm sitting with my own self thinking, oh no, it wasn't all that, you know. I think it provided what it provided for that time, but, you know, thinking of my entire life, some things I was able to get through simply because somebody or something or somewhere was available to me at that time, that maybe, you know, wasn't available to me prior, but it's just for that moment I needed something, it was there and it helped. And, you know, with the, I guess, things being so accessible, like you said, why you? Why me? And it's like, I don't even know if maybe that question is appropriate of us to ask ourselves, not saying that it's a bad question, but it's now questioning nature and the forces that be, which put us in positions where we feel like we have to question that. And, you know, you know, in the beginning of all of this stuff, trying to help and advocate and be somebody, it was about me. I'm going to be honest. It was about me trying to figure out how I can, as Jaha, be this for this person or this thing. And it's not really about me. I think, and I mean, that's so obvious, but like, I think what it is, you know, some people may be a little bit more compassionate. Some people may be a little bit more approachable. Some people might be a little bit better spoken. So in that, I think that's why we follow people just in nature, because we follow people who sound good and look good, and you know what I mean? And you know, we find ourselves in this position where it's like, okay, we're providing something for somebody who is maybe hopeless. And thank you for the magnet saying hope, but you know, it's really about hope and grace. I like that you use the word grace, because people lack that these days. There's the selfishness, but there's also just the lack of empathy, because I think people are more inclined to blaming than accepting people for being people. You know, I think, like I said, I'm 29 years old, coming into 30. There's been a lot of things that happened in the past 10 years that made me learn stuff. One of those things is, you know, dealing with your parents. And, you know, it's not to get too far off topic, but I think one very important thing with people, like, generationally, is like having the hard discussion with your parent, but also understanding that your parent is a human being, because we grow up in a headspace where it's authority, more generally speaking, because people have their own lives and, you know, trials and tribulations, but the general sense of parenthood, we look at these people to be right. We look at them to be the authority figure. We look at them to be the sense of reason, all this stuff, right? As you get older and you find that you're developing your own opinions and stance in the world, you find that maybe this parent, or, you know, we could use that in any sense of authority, because you could, getting back to like the cop thing, the reason that this whole thing kind of started is, you know, cops, when you sit down and really boil it down, cops are people as well. Anybody that is put in a position of power are still people. And we have to be graceful when dealing with certain things and certain people in certain environments. And I think, you know, this will help the general, you know, you're doing your thing with homelessness and youth homelessness, but we're talking about this and hashing this out and unpacking a whole bunch of stuff where at the end of the day, if people can just take out of what we're talking about, just have a little bit more grace, be a little bit more compassionate with people. It doesn't have to be a job. It doesn't have to be a job.
That's what just like demystified I was so lucky that I got to do it as a job.
Right.
But the collective process for me now, this clothing pop-up was like, how do I normalize this? How do I destigmatize it? Because I'll tell you, my favorite conversation that happened that day at this clothing pop-up was, again, free opportunity for people to just take any clothes they want. Doesn't matter, no questions asked.
Yeah, yeah.
Somebody came up to me and said, I can afford this, so I'm not taking it. And I said, oh, hold on a minute. Let's talk about it. Because I said, how much would you pay for this dress? It was a black dress, gorgeous, very nice. Maybe $45 to $50 at the store. Okay. If you can have grace right now and accept this dress, that is for free, no matter your circumstances or situation.
Yeah.
I dare you to take that $40 to $50 and move it forward in a way that you wouldn't have before.
Yeah.
Let's reallocate things and normalize it, because let me tell you, I've been wearing the same pants, the same shoes, certain things. It's okay. You know, I used to have that conversation again with the kids I would talk to. They'd be like, you wear so many different shoes, and I need as many shoes as what you have. But they had to keep buying theirs over and over and over again because they were walking holes into them.
Sure, yeah.
And so to me, it was this concept of how do we open up opportunities, accessibility, where it's destigmatized, so it's not just for a group.
Yeah. Because
you might really like that pair of shoes, and you still deserve it. And what you might be able to do with that money that you would have paid for it, I want to know what you could do with it.
Sure.
I dare you to show me what you could do with that 50. And so like that's the conversations I want to have with people is, yes, I got to do this for a job.
Yeah.
I'm so grateful. Now I understand that we can just do this every day. And so why not?
Yeah.
You know, and so that's my challenge to myself. That's my challenge of putting out the collective process, is to say, if we all collectively came together to process some of this stuff we've been dealing with and maybe make art.
Yeah. I mean, that's the truth. And like at the end of the day, like, you know, thinking differently, I think is really important. People don't take the time to really think freely, but also just think differently. I think you are challenging folks with this to think a little differently, because I would have never thought of, you know, maybe, you know, now you have this dress, you didn't have to pay for it, but now you have this money, which in our society, money is freedom, money is, you know, opportunity and things like that. You now have this thing that can provide something else to somebody who may be financially insecure or whatever the case. But that forces people to think, okay, well, no, now I have $50 extra. Why would I do, you know what I mean? So now it takes away from you and yourself and what you want. But did you need, you know what I mean? And I think, you know, without starting up a whole new conversation, you know, we could definitely talk about, and then we will talk about this more, but, you know, it's just, I think really what it comes down to is in the collective process of just with what you do and just in life, we need to think differently. We have to, you know, look at things with more grace, with more compassion, and just be more open to accepting that we don't know everything. No matter what you try to do in this world, we do not know everything, and there's always a chance to learn and grow and adapt. And, you know, I appreciate you for really coming on and chatting with me about this, because this really probably wouldn't have happened, at least for maybe a couple more months, if you hadn't chatted with me. So
not to the domino
yes,
over.
Thank you very much for doing that, Bri. Check her out, The Collective Process. And you're based out of Saratoga, New York, right?
Yep.
All right, so yeah, check it out if you're ever up in Saratoga. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Pleasure.
And we'll do this again.
I appreciate it.
All right, I appreciate you.
Thank you so much.
Woo! I got to sweating pretty good there. Thank you.
Thank you.